Hello out there in Na'aleh land. We begin again the very exciting beginning of Chumash Devarim. And what's more exciting than the beginning of Devarim? Perhaps Bereshis, but this is no beginning, and this is the beginning of an end, because Devarim is the Mishnah Torah. Today's shir is Lili Nishmas Rachalea Bas Reb Chaim Tzvi Alei Shalom, as are all these wonderful shurim. And we give thanks again to Na'aleh for enabling us to come all the way to Chumash Devarim, and the wonderful service of Na'aleh. So we begin with our summary, which is going to be the summary of the entire Chumash, which is Chumash Devarim, the Mishnah Torah. So we have, as the Jews neared the Promised Land, Moshe reviews for them the events and the experiences which they had encountered during their years in the wilderness. And Moshe recalls at Har Chorev, which of course is Mount Sinai, God had commanded them to break camp and march towards their destination, which is the land of Canaan, the land of Eretz Yisrael. Moshe had claimed that unaided, he was unable to bear the burden of leadership. So therefore, God enabled to be appointed, this was the idea of Yisro initially, judges to assist him, administrators to be appointed to help him. The people had been on the verge of entering the Promised Land, but they were very dismayed by the very pessimistic, indeed derogatory, deprecatory report of the Meraglim, of the spies who went out to spy the land of Israel, coming to report that it was a land that devoured its inhabitants. Things were giant over there. And people were very dismayed by this report. And they complained against God. Consequently, this loss of faith resulted in the extended wandering in the desert, during which time almost all of the older generation had died. As we shall learn, they complained and they said that this is really terrible. God said, "You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about." And ever since that is the night of Tisha B'Av, the night they came back with their bad report, and we've been crying ever since. The Bnei Yisrael camped at Har Sinai for a lengthy period, at Har Seir for a lengthy period. They had been told to continue their travels by passing through the land of Edom. However, they were not to engage in any hostilities there, for this territory had been promised to the descendants of Esav. Nor were they to attack the residents of Moab, for this had been reserved for the children of Lot. However, they then defeated Sichon, the king of Heshbon, who had refused to enable them to enter his domain, his land, and that was the same fate which befell Og. I debated at length if I should describe a lot about Og, which is in our Parsha. Many commentaries talk about Og. It's very, there's a mystique here, and who he is the great survivor. Not clear what he survived from. We'll give a little attention to this when we learn our Parsha in greater depth. Fear of the Israelites began to spread among the neighboring nations. Picture the steamroller coming. All the nations are just packing up their things, buying these large duffel bags, and running for their lives. Until, of course, Amalek is going to jump into the water and let out the steam. Up to this point, everybody's afraid for their lives. The land of Gilead had been given to the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and part of Manasseh, with the provision that they would join their fellow Bnei Yisrael in the conquest of the land of Canaan. Moshe encouraged Yeshua not to fear the nations living in Eretz Yisrael. And that is our summary, which is culled from the Sefer Lilmod Ulalamed. And we begin. A lot of what I'm going to be quoting today I found in the talks of Rabbi Effie Buchwald. Always has interesting insights in the Parsha. Sometimes, of course, he's quoting from other people, but we'll begin with a few important aspects of this repetition, each time analyzing from a different perspective. So Chumash Devarim marks the commencement of the fifth book of the Chumash Devarim. It's the fifth book. And essentially it is a repetition of many of the laws, many of the precepts and stories that were already told, and the narratives in the previous books of the Torah. Therefore, this term of Chumash Devarim is appropriately named in rabbinic literature the Mishnah Torah, the repetition of the second Torah. Even its Greek name, for all those out in the audience, I'm sure the overwhelming majority who know Greek, though a Greek name is Deuteronomy, which also implies repetition. The book of Devarim are Moshe's final words to his people, the reproof of the nation, and the much detail regarding all this reward awaits them for their faithfulness, and what's going to be the consequence if you're not faithful, if you are feckless, if you are not faithful, then there's going to be punishment. Throughout the book of Devarim, there are many expansions or elaborations, and on quite a few mitzvot, there are actually mitzvot which are mentioned for the very first time that heretofore have not been mentioned in the Torah. We'll explain some of those very soon. For example, We have the Aseret Dibros and Va'et Chanan. That'll be next week's class in Mirz Hashem. However, many entirely new mitzvot are also mentioned. 1/3 of the mitzvot, and you do the math, Chumash Devarim is 1/5 of the Torah, and yet 1/3 of the Torah can be found in the Chumash Devarim. 1/3 of 613 mitzvot, according to the count of Ramban, are found in Chumash Devarim. When I say according to Ramban, I mean the Rambam, because there is a polemic among the early Rishonim how to count the mitzvot. According to the Rambam's count, 1/5 of the mitzvot, 1/3 are found in the Chumash Devarim. According to Ramban, in his introduction, Nachmanides, introduction to Chumash Devarim, we find that Moshe is teaching the people about specific mitzvot that they're going to have to know when they enter the land of Israel. They'll enter the promised land, so he's teaching them